Thursday morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the Weather Channel. 10 minutes before the hour, you know it's time for Storm Watch. We'll talk about the threat for severe weather later today in the forecast coming up in just a minute. But of course, as a part of Storm Watch, we have the tropical update. And we'll begin this segment with the tropical update and show you anything going on across the Atlantic basin. Well, things are very quiet right now, and we do not anticipate any tropical cyclone development over the next 24 hours. Actually, the next several days it should be fairly quiet, and all areas across the Atlantic basin pretty much void of tropical development. Notice the Gulf of Mexico, it is quiet this morning. The Caribbean, we do not have anything threatening. Even across the open, broad waters of the southern Atlantic here, we have had some thunderstorm activity with the intertropical convergence zone, the area coming together, but nothing organized at all. Had a little wave that came ashore here just south of the Yucatan Peninsula, but it'll start to weaken as it moves over land. Notice the dry conditions and the fair skies across the Caribbean here. We do not have any problems. Jamaica looking good with fair skies. Most of Cuba, the Cayman Islands, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, fair conditions this morning. The islands that make up the Lesser Antilles, we do not have any clouds across the area this morning, as the Eastern Caribbean is void of any cloud development. And the Bahamas, not too bad here. We have had some cloudiness across the extreme northwestern Bahamian chain, but other than that, nothing to worry about. If you are planning a cruise across the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, it looks pretty good. No problems for you. Actually, a pretty good idea to go on a cruise this weekend, as we have no tropical systems. Here's a different vantage point as we take you a little farther east across the Atlantic waters, and there you have some thunderstorm activity as the trade winds come together here. But notice all of the thunderstorm activity is mainly south of the 10-degree latitude line, which is this line right here. And if these thunderstorms progress and continue to move due west, they'll pretty much just run right into the northern parts here of South America. But in terms of it developing over the open waters, not a good chance at all. Taking you farther east now as we get closer to the West African coast. This is where we look, of course, as things start to push off of the coast. Very impressive waves. This is the beginning of it all as we watch these waves. And if they hold together, of course, and move closer across the Atlantic waters, closer to the islands, that's when we really start to become worried. But we first look at them coming off the western African coast, and this one still has some convection. It's holding together pretty good. Just came off, say, within the last 6 to 8 hours. But another very impressive wave right here, just east of Senegal. It seems as though it's holding together good too. We'll have to watch this one as it comes off of the coast, because this whole area now we watch through the month of August for a possible development across the region. So we will keep you posted as we go through the month of August, but over the next 24 to 48 hours, nothing is expected to develop across the Atlantic basin. It's been more active, of course, in the eastern Pacific. We're still dealing with Georgette, a hurricane. It maintained its hurricane status overnight with winds of 85 miles an hour. It's moving west-northwest at 14. Big ridge of high pressure is building across the southwest, and this ridge of high pressure, we think, will keep it more to the west-northwest, more of a westerly component. And with that in mind, it will not move as quickly over cooler waters, so it could hold together even more so and strengthen a little bit more as we go through the next 48 hours. Winds projected to reach close to 95 miles an hour by tomorrow afternoon. So we'll keep you posted on Hurricane Georgette, but it is moving away from all land masses. Here's a look at Georgette, our satellite picture, the infrared, which shows some of the higher cloud tops. And actually, we can see right here a little hint of the eye right near the center, but it looks as though the bulk of the deep convection is on the south and west side of the center of circulation. A different vantage point of Georgette shows it, again, moving to the west-northwest And a little farther south and east, we do not have anything organized just off of the South American or Central American coast. Well, that's a quick look at the tropics. Now let's take you back stateside. We are watching the potential for storms here preceding our surface cold front over northern Minnesota and eastern North Dakota. We'll talk more about this next.
How can you plan your day when you don't know what the weather is going to be like? When I was in high school, I enjoyed doing things out of doors. Sometimes the weather had an effect on things that I wanted to do. In other words, you can't play baseball in a thunderstorm. Sometimes the fish bite better when it's raining. So I started paying attention to the forecast, and it made all the difference. I know people like to plan ahead for their day, and they need to know how the weather is going to be later in the day. Now I'm the guy with the forecast. I can help you out.
You've got a house.
Good morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. Well, some thunderstorms could be turning rather ugly come later this afternoon. They might be accompanied by some very heavy, blinding downpours, some hail, and some damaging winds as well. And we'll say more about the potential for some bad thunderstorms coming up in just a moment. But first of all, let's see what's happening in the tropics. It's time for the Tropical Update and Mr. John Hope. John?
Well, thanks, Cheryl. We're going to start with the Atlantic Ocean, and once again today we're not really seeing anything out there that offers any kind of a threat. I'm going to show you a long loop here. This is longer than we often show on the Weather Channel. It'll be about 24 hours long. But we can see the whole time in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico that's been virtually free of any kind of organized cloud systems, except in the southwestern Caribbean right down here now, north of Panama. That's all we see. And I would point out that off the east coast of the United States that we've had a little flare up in this old frontal zone that has moved off the southeast. But you can see this is already moving toward the east, and even if anything should develop, and right now it doesn't appear as if anything of a tropical structure will develop, it would continue to move east and northeast away from the coast, so no threat there at all. And we have just one tropical wave out in the Atlantic that's probably worth mentioning, way out here in the Atlantic, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute as we look at the, well, we'll take it first of all to the coast of Africa, where we've had one disturbance just move off the coast and another one in the wings here just about to move off. And the tropical wave we're talking about right out in here, we see a little bit of a flare-up right there, but what we don't have is any concentration of showers or thunder showers around the center. And until we get something like that, it certainly is not going to develop. We can show you that same structure again on our visible satellite picture, and right up in there we can see just a little bit of a twist. In fact, we can even focus in on this a little closer and show you yet another picture. Right up in there is the area that we're kind of watching. You can kind of see it rotating around there just a little bit, but it's a long way from being anything that we really have to concern ourselves with. Now, in the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, you'd be hard-pressed to ever find a nicer day. If you were cruising down there, the winds, surface winds, aren't very strong at all. Just a few thunderstorms north of Panama, and that's about all we have either in the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean. Don't very often see on the 13th day of August, black clear skies in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So it's during these very quiet times, though, that you need to maybe be thinking a little bit about what you would do in the event that you do have a hurricane. And if you live anywhere from Maine through South Texas, someday a hurricane is going to come there. You see in the dark red much more often than other places. Every 4 to 6 years you can expect a hurricane strike, and that includes South Florida, the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and right there at the mouth of the Mississippi River. But no matter which one of those places you happen to live, someday you're going to have a hurricane, so you need to be thinking a little bit about what you would do, whether you'd have to evacuate or whatever measures that you want to take, supplies and so on and so forth. Now, it's been a little busier in the Pacific, to be sure. We have a hurricane out there. This is Georgette. It's moving toward the northwest now, and it's west-northwest rather, about 12 miles an hour, centered 16.5 north, 116.9 west. And what we'd like to emphasize about Georgette is that it's already produced quite a few high waves down there, and they are emanating from the storm center as large swells. They're headed up towards Southern California, still about 500 or 600 miles away, but the swells will be building up there primarily tomorrow and Sunday, so surf will be up a little bit over the weekend, so you surfers have a good time out there, but be careful. Here's a satellite picture. Don't have enough to make a loop. The first visible picture just as the sun came up this morning. Well, that's the tropics, and now Cheryl's got some thunderstorms and possibility of severe thunderstorms to talk about, so here she is.
Thanks, John, and that is certainly right. Looking at the possibility for some really rough and ugly weather conditions this afternoon throughout parts of the Plain States and even down through Texas and Louisiana. Thunder showers already this morning for Dallas and Fort Worth and Garland, Texas, and we'll see more of that this afternoon. Most of the deep south will be under a very moist, a very unstable atmospheric conditions, so things will be ripe for the possibility for some strong thunderstorms. And later on today, a chance for some nasty weather too coming in over towards Minneapolis and St. Paul. So even though it may not be storming right now, things are definitely going to be going downhill by later on tonight for the Twin Cities. Across the southeast right now, just a smattering of showers, nothing too terribly heavy or intense. But we start to pick up even more rain activity as we head towards the southern plain states. Again, the showers gliding over towards Dallas and Fort Worth, rains over towards Tulsa, McAlester, Oklahoma. We've had some heavier showers and thunder showers, though, gliding in across northern Louisiana. And all this rain definitely a welcome sight across the deep south. Stay tuned. We'll see what's happening across the rest of the country. Current weather's coming up in just a moment.
Texas and the Southwest ride the crest of a heat wave. Will thunderstorms bring relief from triple-digit temperatures? Find out on Weather Center after your local forecast.
There you go, Ashley. How would you like to save money on your family's prescription drugs?
To Georgia. We've also had a few problems extending into portions of Arizona. We'll cover all that coming up. But as you know, this time of the year we begin our storm watch with our tropical update, and we'll start you there first, looking at the tropical Atlantic. Do we have a lot of activity here? Not a whole lot to speak of, but there are a couple of points of interest that I need to point out, and also a Category 3 hurricane in the eastern Pacific. So let's go ahead first and check out the tropical Atlantic, and we'll find a fairly quiet Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean, central Atlantic looking pretty quiet. And incidentally, as far as the upper level winds are concerned, going into the Atlantic, they're actually pretty favorable. So all we need is to see something going at the surface, and we may eventually have something on our hands here of tropical orientation. Let's go ahead and look into the eastern Atlantic. Waves continue to move off the coast of Africa. We extend on into the eastern Atlantic, and this one appears to be kind of falling apart to some extent. We've been watching this particular tropical wave. There does appear to be a little bit more of a cyclonic rotation to this compared to what we saw, say, 12 to 24 hours ago, but it is still lacking in convection or thunderstorm activity. So we'll continue to watch this particular wave. Again, not very impressive in the sense that we have any real deep convection or thunderstorms associated with it, but the fact that there does appear to be some sort of a circulation, so it will be something that certainly bears some watching as we work our way into the next day or so. We'll certainly keep an eye on that. Otherwise, out into the Atlantic, not a lot to talk about. Same is true in and around the Caribbean, fairly quiet. Extending on into Cuba, Hispaniola, and also down around Puerto Rico, you get the flare-up of the afternoon thunderstorms over land and then kind of dying out, so not a whole lot happening there. Don't forget, though, that we are not quite at the peak of the hurricane season. It is very typical as we go through the month of August to see a dramatic increase in activity, and so that's what we'll be watching for. And the peak of the season, of course, around September 10th. Into the eastern Pacific, we have Hurricane Georgette, and as of 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, it is now a Category 3 hurricane. Centered at 18.0 north, 118.6 west, 645 miles west of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Again, sustained winds of 115 miles per hour. It's moving to the west-northwest at 13, and the estimated central pressure at 965 millibars. Looking at it from a satellite perspective, and there goes our visible, you can clearly see the eye of the hurricane. We'll take an infrared picture on this one, and once the sun sets, we lose our visible picture, so we'll look at the infrared. spread, showing the higher cloud tops, which are depicted in the brighter colors here. So it's certainly well defined. You can certainly see the outflow with this hurricane, Category 3 once again. But the important point to make is, with respect to land, this is not going to be a major factor. We think that this northwest movement will continue, which is going to run it pretty well parallel to Mexico. This is not going to be a great effect to any landmass, but I should mention it is going to begin to kick up some surf starting Friday as we go into the south-facing beaches of Southern California. Over the open water, maybe some 5 to 7 foot surf, 5 to 7 foot waves, and then maybe some breaking 10-foot waves on the south-facing beaches of Southern California. So surfers, get ready for that. Probably seeing the effects of that starting on Friday, tomorrow, probably at its max or peaking Saturday and Sunday, and then starting to see the waves dissipate a bit as we head on into Monday. So that's a little surfing forecast for you, what you might expect. And that is a look at the tropics. We take you back to the lower 48 to talk about some heavy rain. The problem here is, even though some rain is desperately needed over parts of the south, we're finding very, very stubborn, slow-moving showers and thunderstorms producing the potential for flooding in and around Coweta County, for instance, in northwest Georgia. A lot of those showers and storms hanging just to the west of Atlanta. We've also had some stronger and slow-moving thunderstorms into parts of Arizona, and there our severe thunderstorm watch remains in effect really just for the next couple of minutes, and this will expire entirely. We have had a few severe thunderstorm warnings to the south and west of Phoenix, and there's a look at some of those thunderstorms. And still heading into Pima County, there are still some pretty nasty looking cells across the western portion of that county. And also not far from Globe, we're finding a few more thunderstorms developing. So that's where you might find some of the more gusty winds, and again, maybe some heavy downpours associated with those showers and thunderstorms as well. Into the southeast, we'll continue to see some wet weather. Now, some of that rain will dissipate as we head into the morning, but in this very murky atmosphere, expect more of those showers and storms to fire up again heading into the afternoon on Friday. Friday morning featuring a few showers and thunderstorms with this front, but it's fairly weak, and this is really going to be the big weather maker as we head into the early part of your weekend. That's a look at the tropics and your strong storm.
After a day of clear skies and comfortable summer temperatures, rain may be in store for much of the east. We'll show you who should brace for showers next on Weather Center.
Everyone enjoys listening to birds, and now you can bring those happy sounds indoors with the official National Audubon Society singing bird clock. At 12 o'clock, you'll hear the haunting call of the owl. And throughout the day, a different bird will